The story begins in 1897 with the ship Demeter sailing from Russia to England. The crew is found drained of blood, the captain lashed to the helm as they arrive in port, and the sole survivor, Dracula, slips away. He goes unchecked until the events of every Dracula tale unfold, when Van Helsing finally turns the vampire to ashes. Yet, unlike others, this undead son of the dragon repeatedly resurrects. The hunter decides the best course is to seal Dracula in a steel coffin beneath his feeding grounds at Carfax Abbey. Over a century later, the abbey is now a museum of antiquities, still overseen by the same Van Helsing. Using the vampire's blood, extracted with leeches, he has discovered a way to stave off death, and has changed his name to Matthew to avoid suspicion of being Abraham. Most people believe the Dracula story was a fiction by Bram Stoker, including Matt's apprentice, Simon, who delivers a 15th century crossbow for the collection. Matthew's assistant, Selina, finishes her day, turns down Simon's advances, and reveals that she's secretly collaborating with a group of burglars led by Marcus. Disguised as a police officer, a thief named Trick gains entry to the building, and the 5-man squad subdues the guards. They've come to rob the museum's heavily protected vault, which requires Ibe's handprint, retina scan, and a recording of the owner's voice, provided by one of the thieves. Nightshade.no1 knows what the vault contains, but Selina assures Marcus it must be valuable due to the old man's intense protection. Despite discovering vampire skulls lining the walls, the oblivious criminals proceed underground, reaching a chamber where all corridors converge. They break in, only to find a coffin sitting inside an empty cavern, leading to a heated argument about their next move. Marcus dismisses the eerie setup as a scare tactic, believing no one would hide treasure inside a coffin. Eddie objects to going further, but Marcus orders him to move the box. This activates a pressure plate, impaling Eddie with silver spikes designed to stake Dracula should he awaken. As he retreats, a second trap kills Dax, whose only task was to freeze the lock. The team scrambles to find a way out, and Nightshade suggests blowing a hole into the river. At Selina's insistence, they also decide to take the coffin, assuming it holds valuables. Meanwhile, Van Helsing hears the alarm, arms himself with an old flintlock and silver bullets, only to find that the thieves have already escaped with the coffin, leaving behind their dead. The thieves transport their cargo on a plane to America, leaving Nightshade in charge of gaining access. Frustrated by leaving empty-handed, Nightshade cuts himself, inadvertently awakening the slumbering vampire, whose misty excretion now influences the mortal. Dracula guides Nightshade to his resting place, where his body lies covered in leeches that keep him in a weakened state. After a brief encounter with a leech to the eye, the thief discovers a silver crucifix adorned with rubies, but as Dracula rises, the true horror is revealed. The next to fall victim is Trick, who finds Nightshade dead and Dracula awake, walking about. Now rejuvenated and youthful, Dracula quickly tests his powers of seduction on Selina, which naturally works. Marcus, in a panic, opens fire on the bullet-immune immortal. Meanwhile, their pilot, Charlie, struggles to keep the plane steady as cabin pressure drops and a sinister storm approaches. Dracula brutally rips out Marcus's throat. We then cut to a woman named Mary in New Orleans. She has recurring nightmares and suddenly envisions Dracula aboard the plane, but dismisses it as just another dream when he appears in her bedroom. He recognizes her scent, but Mary pulls away, and the illusion is broken by the arrival of her roommate and best friend, Lucy. Later, Mary confides in her priest, Father David, about her nightmares, suspecting they might be related to her recently deceased mother, or the father she's never met. Back in England, Simon arrives at work to find the place ransacked, with Matthew preparing to leave. Simon pleads with his mentor to share what's happening, but Van Helsing remains tight-lipped and boards a plane to America. Upon arriving in the States, Van Helsing looks pale without his leeches and sees a news report by Valerie about the crash of a private plane. Charlie's corpse is lashed to the pilot's seat, reminiscent of the Demeter, and Dracula's coffin is found nearby. Van Helsing heads to New Orleans to track down his old nemesis, unaware that his nosy apprentice is following him. At the crash site, Valerie and her cameraman JT are doing some after-hours coverage. JT, unable to see Dracula through the camera until he opens his other eye, is killed. Valerie flees to her van, but is haunted by JT's death on the monitors, and Dracula soon claims her as his second bride, alongside Selina, who is bagged up with her accomplices at the town hall. Van Helsing arrives at the town hall with his silver stake launcher, only to find some of the body bags already empty. Simon confronts Abe and, seeing him attempt to drive a blade through Selena, foolishly stops him, unaware of the true danger, allowing the vampire to escape. Nightshade suddenly leaps out fangs first, but Helsing swiftly puts him down, leaving Simon without any argument on that one. He instructs the apprentice to watch over the corpse and goes searching for Selena with his flintlock upstairs. However, Simon takes his eyes off Nightshade, who revives as the stake had missed his heart. Before the vampire can kill him, Simon uses the semi-automatic launcher to ensure he hits the heart. With his first vampire slain, Simon becomes determined to eliminate the others. However, Marcus rises as one of the undead, and Simon only manages to stab him in the eye with a crucifix knife before Marcus escapes. Van Helsing is about to put down Selena when Trick attacks him from behind, but the rookie vampire's head is blown off by the hunter, and Selena is nailed to the wall when she lunges at Simon. Despite everything, Simon can't bring himself to behead his co-worker, and the two hunters flee before the police arrive. Matthew finally reveals the truth to Simon about the situation's gravity, that he is actually Abraham Van Helsing, and that he used Dracula's lack of reflection against him during the 1897 capture. Abe discovered the properties of vampire blood inadvertently when Crossfire gave him the initial injection. However, his prolonged use of it is why Dracula now has a connection with his daughter. Unlike other vampires, Dracula cannot be destroyed by conventional methods and is repulsed by God and all things Christian. Meanwhile, Mary is at the church again with Father David as the town's Mardi Gras kicks off outside. She confides in him about the feeling that someone is trying to claim her soul. But when the priest appears to her as Dracula, confirming her fears, she flees the church in terror. Meanwhile, the vampires in physical form stroll through the town's Mardi Gras and are startled by falling change. Bride number 1 is currently undergoing a psych evaluation at the police station when Dracula arrives, and the two vampires feast on the doctor and officer. Dracula then visits the music store where Mary works and recognizes Lucy, who had disturbed his apparition. Mary isn't working that day, so Lucy takes Dracula home to wait for her and invites the vampire inside. She mentions that Mary's mother was deeply religious and raised Mary to be God-fearing, before easily succumbing to Dracula's seduction and becoming bride number 3. They engage in a levitating encounter, which Mary senses from afar. Mary goes looking for Lucy at work and runs into Simon, who has come there alone while Abe heads to her house. Simon tells her that he's working with her father, but she wants nothing to do with him after he abandoned her mother. Mary is not around when Simon is attacked by a one-eyed Marcus, disguised as a homeless man. Marcus quickly learns he can no longer touch Silver, and Simon uses this opportunity to stab him with a silver blade and decapitate him. Meanwhile, Van Helsing arrives at Mary's house, only to be betrayed by his reflection and captured by Dracula. The vampire blames Abe for stealing his blood and claims Mary as his own since it now flows through her veins. Mary receives a cryptic call from Lucy, who tells her she's currently with Mary's father. Rushing upstairs, Mary finds her father dead, with a pole driven through his neck. Lucy, now a full-fledged vampiress, attacks, and the entire house transforms into a Dracula-induced nightmare, with all 3 brides tormenting Mary until their master arrives to reclaim his blood. Dracula morphs into a wolf and chases her straight out of the house, where she falls into Simon's arms, who manages to shoot a stake through Dracula, causing him to disperse into a swarm of bats. The two escape, with Simon learning that Van Helsing is dead, and Mary discovering that her mother refused to let her father see her after finding out about his addiction to the leeches. Seeking refuge, they decide to hide out at Father David's church, hoping the hallowed ground will protect them. Simon reveals that Van Helsing saved him when he was in a dark place and feels obligated to protect Mary as a way of repaying that debt. In the church library, they delve into Dracula's history, hoping to uncover a weakness that could destroy him. They find nothing in Christian literature that explains the vampire's aversion to silver. Mary translates the Hebrew written in Van Helsing's blood, reading, "Believe in me, for I am the way to eternity." Suddenly, Dracula appears, and Simon uses a Bible to fend him off, allowing Mary to escape into the cemetery. The vampire is unaffected by the book until its pages ignite upon contact with his skin. Dracula finds Mary before Simon can intervene and explains how he has spent centuries searching for someone not bitten, but born with his curse. He captures her and takes her to a nearby church roof overlooking the town. Using his bite, He curses Mary and reveals his true identity as Judas Iscariot, the traitor who sold Jesus to the Romans for 30 pieces of silver. In his attempt to atone by hanging himself, the rope snapped, and God cursed him with eternal life, condemning him to walk the earth alone. With a strong aversion to Christian artifacts and silver, Judas had wished for death, but now fights to survive, intending to reshape the world in his image as an affront to God. Meanwhile, Simon sees Selena feeding on Mardi Gras revelers and follows her back to the church. The three brides try to seduce Simon for an easy kill, but he breaks a wooden cross and stakes Valerie in the heart. As the first bride dies, the remaining two capture Simon, holding him for Dracula. Dracula demands that Mary make her first kill by feasting on Simon, but she only pretends to bite him, instead drawing blood from her own lip. She requests Simon's head as a trophy, using the moment to unsheath a silver knife. When Lucy notices the absence of puncture wounds, Mary decapitates her best friend and impales Dracula. Knowing betrayal all too well, Dracula strikes Mary around the rooftop, boasting about how betrayal is his forte. Mary's newfound vampire abilities protect her, but Simon struggles against Selena. He's thrown through a window, but manages to grab a pair of garden shears and decapitates Selena. Dracula then catches them, tossing Simon aside and giving Mary the opportunity to wrap a power cord around Dracula's neck. She throws herself from the roof, attempting to finish the job Judas started 2,000 years ago. He struggles to hold onto her, but she falls, yet he's content to see that she survives. Dracula then releases her from the vampire curse with just a few words. This time, the noose does not break, and Judas finally dies, turning to ashes as the sun rises, with Jesus watching over him. Some time later, Simon and Mary take over the museum together, with the new Van Helsing taking on her father's role of keeping Dracula's ashes sealed inside his coffin. The movie ends,